I have a client that just hit a major milestone. She hit 300 episodes. That is tons of hours of purpose-driven content. But it really makes you think and ask yourself the question, is this backlog a massive graveyard where all of this great content just sits there and no one listens to it? Or is it a gold mine that continues to drive impact and income? Today, we're going to be talking about how to turn your past episodes into something that is working for you, whether your goal is more downloads, deeper community, or new clients. Welcome to Podcasting Unlocked, the show for purpose-driven podcasters. I'm Alicia Galati, founder of Galati Media, and I'm here to share actionable strategies to help you amplify your message and grow your audience. Hey friends, so excited to have you back here. I recently had a client hit 300 episodes, and I was able to interview her for this incredible milestone, and it really got me thinking, what is the purpose of having such an extensive backlog, right? So many people don't hit 300 episodes, and that can feel like really daunting, especially if you're someone who's just starting out, because less than 3% of podcasters actually hit 300 episodes. So how can we make sure that your past content, all this content that you spend years gathering and creating for your audience, is actually working for you? Most podcasters work on a week-to-week basis, right? That's the typical cadence, 4 episodes. And they just think, hey, next Tuesday's episode, this is what's going out. But I think that if we take a step back and really assess what it is that we're trying to create with our show, it can allow us to repurpose this content in a way that actually helps us achieve those goals. You've probably heard me talk about the typical 4 goals that podcasters have. We have episodes, we can link those in the show notes if you're unfamiliar with them, but I'll run through them really quick. The first one is growth. That is a podcast goal that we definitely see people have. That is where they want to increase their downloads. The next one is conversion. They want to increase their revenue, get leads from their podcast listeners or from their guests. The third is impact. They want brand visibility. We see this a lot with our nonprofits that we're working with. And then the last one is engagement. And this is where they're trying to build a community. Those are the 4 goals that we tend to see. Today, I'm going to break down what kinds of strategies work for each of those goals when we're looking at a backlog of content. So the first is growth. If your goal is growth, then here are some things that you're going to want to do in order to make the most of your past content. Here, the focus is SEO and discovery. Now, even if your goal is not exactly growth, this is still an incredible strategy that you can use to increase your downloads, which then can increase your revenue, right? So a lot of these goals can be in tandem, but if your sole focus is growth, then SEO and discovery are going to be your main points that you want to focus on. The strategy here is an SEO audit. Now, this is something that I can do for you. You can go to my website, helpmypod.com, book a free consultation, and we can talk through what that SEO audit might look like. But to start, go back to your top 20 performing episodes or the first 50 episodes that you have released. I want you to look at a few different things. The first is going to be the title. If your title starts with episode number, chatting with Sarah, then that is not going to be a title that is SEO friendly at all. Instead, it should be something like how to overcome burnout as a solopreneur with Sarah Jones. That SEO title makes a lot more sense because it tells your audience exactly what it is. And it gets new people who are maybe searching for burnout or searching for solopreneur your content instead of chatting with Sarah, because that doesn't tell me anything about the episode. Next, you want to look at the podcast description. And there you want to make sure that you're using long tail keywords or even just short keywords, right? It could be burnout, it could be solopreneur, or you could just have a lot of overcoming burnout in your description. So make sure you have that. Additionally, I want you to update your graphic. This is something that I was talking with a client about recently. She is focusing heavily on SEO because she's not posting about the podcast on social media. And we'll have an episode talking about that and the strategies that we're implementing for her in the near future. But one of the things that she wanted to do was keep every episode cover art standard for just here's the podcast cover art, and that's going to be the same for every episode. And here is the problem with that. These apps have almost like a checklist of, okay, you did this right, you did this right. You don't have an episode specific cover art. Let's dock points from you. And I don't want to see that be the reason that your incredible content does not get out in front of people. So here is where I would recommend go to those 20 top performing episodes that you have and change the cover art if it's just your podcast cover art right now, and then slowly work your way through. Another thing that you can do is add a transcript to the back end. I use Buzzsprout as my hosting platform, and there is space in there to have the transcript. And then finally, this strategy, I'm not 100% sure how I feel about it just yet. Ask me again in about 6 months, but it is adding the guest profile to the back end of the RSS feed. Again, I use Buzzsprout, and they have a part under the website where you can add collaborators. So then I can add collaborators to specific episodes. I can add co-hosts, I can add guests, and then it connects that information to the back end of your RSS feed. This is especially important if you have people who are very Googleable, meaning their name is being Googled. Authors, speakers, thought leaders, business owners who are well known, any of those types of people are going to fit in that criteria. So those are some things that you can do for the SEO. And I know that feels like, wow, that's a lot. But that's why that podcast SEO audit with me would be beneficial, because I'll give you a full report on the things that you would need to change, or you can hire me to make those changes. All right, on to engagement. If your goal is engagement, you want to build community with your podcast. The problem here is that your audience, who's maybe a new listener, sees 300 episodes and thinks, wow, that's incredibly intimidating. And they don't really know where to start. So the strategy here is to create curated starter packs or playlists that are going to help your audience get started. So you can group your back catalog by theme. We had a client who talked specifically around boundaries. And what she did, and I really love this idea, is on her website, she has a menu that says, I'm struggling with, and then it's a drop down. From the drop down, they can say, I'm struggling with boundaries. I'm struggling with food. I'm struggling with my workplace. I'm struggling with self doubt, whatever it is that they're struggling with. And then she has playlists that she's created on those web pages. So it keeps people on her website, but it also gives people a place to start. And I think that this is something that many of us can utilize, especially if you have themes for your podcast. If you do find yourself talking about the same topics over and over again, it's important to have these created. So, highly recommend doing that. So, what that might look like for me is I would have one on podcast marketing, one on podcast content, one on podcast monetization, and then one on probably something around mindset. And so that kind of covers most of the strategies and the things that we tend to talk about on this show. So your action here is to create a playlist. That could be a YouTube playlist, a Spotify playlist, whatever makes the most sense for you and your audience. Buzzsprout also has the ability, if you're not wanting to use Spotify and not wanting to use YouTube, I know that's a big hot topic right now. So if you're not wanting to use either of those platforms, then please use your tool like Buzzsprout. They have ways that you can add tags to the bottom of each episode, and then you can generate a playlist based on that. And anytime that you add a tag to the new episodes that come out, then it will automatically add it to that Buzzsprout playlist, and you can embed that on your website. So many tools available to you to be able to do that. Next is impact. Here, you're looking to create authority around your brand. Maybe you're using your podcast to get more visibility for people to see you, to know you, to trust you, to maybe hire you if you're working as a consultant with bigger businesses. And the important part with this is using your podcast content as reference material for what you're trying to achieve. So when you're pitching yourself to other podcasts or for speaking gigs, don't just send them a bio. And I know that that's like, well, duh. But seriously, use your podcast as here's where I deep dove into that topic. You can use it if you're pitching yourself to do workshops, which would then increase your brand visibility and your authority, also can generate leads, also can grow your audience, right? There's so many different ways that we can use this and twist this to make it work for each of these goals and multiple goals. So send them a link of a specific deep dive that you did, and it could be 2 years ago. And I think that here too, you can also use this for future episodes where you have compilations. And we've talked about this in the episode recently where I shared what to do when you're needing an emergency plan because life lives. And having a deep dive on certain topics can be really beneficial because you can say, hey, we're going to replay this, or hey, I wanted to add a few extra thoughts to this. Here are my additional thoughts, and repurpose that content in a way that goes deeper, but also references back to your past content. So I think that that is a strategy. Sometimes with the impact goal, it can be harder to see how that equates to a result. And the result that we want is you want to establish your authority. You are not just a newbie jumping on a trend. You're not just someone who's all of a sudden TikTok famous, and like no shade to people who are TikTok famous, but you've been doing this for some time. And that's going to help you show up with more authority than other people who are also pitching themselves to these spaces. Last, but definitely not least, because this is the one most people want to know, is conversion. This means you're increasing your revenue and generating leads. If you have 100 episodes promoting a masterclass that closed in 2023, this is a problem. I would love to see you use dynamic ads to go in and actually talk about the current things that you're working on. I recently did this for my podcast, that is my hobby podcast, We Read Smut. We changed the day that it's releasing because capacity just changed. And I have a pre-roll going on every single episode that says, hey, popping in real quick to let you know episodes are now dropping on Fridays instead of Wednesdays. Let's go ahead and get into it. Simply a way to let people know what's currently happening. On this podcast, if you are listening to it on the app, not watching it on YouTube, then you probably heard my ad in there of here's my 15 ways to improve your podcast, grab my freebie, or here's how you can work with me, go to helpmypod.com. Any of these dynamic ads can be used when the content is relevant. And this is really good, especially if you are someone who has live workshops, who regularly has open and closed door programs. And I would love to see people utilizing these strategies a lot more. And it could be as simple as saying, hey, I know you're enjoying this archive episode. If you want to go deeper, grab my free guide at insert www dot URL. And that is a great way to say, hey, I know this is a past episode. Here is a relevant and up-to-date piece of content that is going to help you. And the goal here is really to turn someone who's listening to episode 10 into a lead for your current business model. Now, of course, there are tons of other ways to generate leads for your business using your podcast. But when we're talking about having a ton of episodes for people to pick from, this is a quick and easy way to go ahead and do that. But then we also need to consider, are we increasing the number of people who are listening to us? What are the strategies that we're doing? If any of these felt a little overwhelming or like, I'm not really sure where I fit in any of these goals, book a free consultation. Let's just hop on a call and I will see how I can support you. Maybe I send you to my goals workshop or I send you to one of my other freebies. Either way, I want to make sure that you're getting the results that you really desire for your podcast. So let's recap really quick. Growth, you want to focus on SEO, rename the titles, dig deep into the descriptions, all that fun stuff. Next, engagement, create curated playlists to reduce the overwhelm of your listeners. Third, impact, use your old episodes to showcase your expertise or to create a roundup episode that really shows who you are or to go deeper. And then conversion, update your dynamic ads to capture leads. Now, the challenge here for you today is to pick one of those pillars for this week. If you want growth, rename 5 titles. If you want engagement, make a playlist. Don't let this episode simply be another thing to do on my list. Just get it done. Even if it's something very simple, like you don't have to go through all 300 episodes and create a playlist with 50 episodes on it. Just start with 5, just start with 10. It doesn't have to be super complicated. The goal here really is just to make a difference with your show, to create the impact that you want using strategies that are going to move you forward with your goals. All right. Again, if you have any questions or if you are feeling stuck, please go to helpmypod.com, book a free consultation. I don't sell on those. If it makes sense to sell, then sure. But I do not sell on those. It is usually me guiding you towards here's an episode to check out, or here is where you can get more resources, or here's how you can do this on your own. And that way you can get the support you need without it feeling like I have to get on a sales call. It's not what these free consultations are for. All right. Until next time, happy podcasting.